Welcome to the next training video, part of a series of tutorials for the Natural Heritage Data Explorer. You will also find the Virginia ConservationVision models on NHDE under the header Conservation Planning. ConservationVision is a set of statewide conservation planning maps that feature priorities of different conservation interests. In addition to being available on NHDE, this data set is available for download for use in GIS. Let's take a look at the various models and layers that make up ConservationVision. The Potential Rare Species Richness layer categorizes 3-mile diameter hexagons into low, medium, and high classes based on the number of predicted habitat suitability models that fall within the hexagon. The Natural Landscape Assessment, or ecological cores, are large, unfragmented patches of natural land with at least 100 acres of interior cover, ranked for ecological integrity from C1 Outstanding to C5 General. The Forest Conservation Values Model is a tool designed by the Virginia Department of Forestry to strategically identify the highest priority forest land for conservation in Virginia. The intent is to maximize the efficiency of limited resources by focusing conservation efforts on the highest quality, most productive, and most vulnerable forest lands statewide. The Watershed Impact Model quantifies the relative importance or value of lands for protecting water quality and watershed integrity. The purpose of the model is to establish geographic priorities for conservation of existing land cover, restoration or implementation of best management practices, or urban stormwater management. The Nature-Based Recreation Access Model quantifies the availability of opportunities for nature-based recreation on Virginia's public lands and waters, and identifies areas where more opportunities are needed. The model is broken out into land and water-based recreation needs, which include metrics such as travel time to the resources, size of the resource or access points to the resource, activities offered, and current recreation pressure. The Cultural Resource Preservation Index displays the likelihood of a given location to have conservation value when considering known and evaluated cultural heritage resources. For the purposes of obscuring sensitive boundaries, the Commonwealth of Virginia was divided into a hexagon grid. Resources that have been surveyed in the inventory of the Department of Historic Resources were ranked by DCR based on levels of cultural interest 1 through 3. The agricultural model is a data set that quantifies the relative suitability of lands for agricultural activity. Agricultural value is assessed primarily based on inherent soil suitability, but also accounts for current land cover as well as travel time between agricultural producers and consumers. Model values range from 0, unsuitable for agriculture, to 100, optimal. The Virginia Development Vulnerability Model quantifies the predicted relative risk of conversion from natural, rural, or other open space lands to urbanized or other built-up land uses. It is a raster data set in which the relative vulnerability to development is assessed primarily based on travel time to 3 key development attractors: urban areas, metropolitan areas, and hotspots of impervious growth. The Natural Land Network, an additional layer you will find under the Conservation Planning header, consists of C1 and C2 ecological cores, as well as a corridors layer developed through a modeling process that prioritizes areas of relatively intact natural cover between the cores, as these areas are most valuable for movement of animal and plant populations over time, as they respond to various changes in habitat values across the landscape. The model guided corridors as much as possible through public and private natural lands with ecological value and protections from natural and anthropogenic disturbances. By including lands of high ecological integrity and identifying lands that represent important natural connections, the Natural Land Network facilitates protection of biodiversity and resilience as the landscape changes. On NHDE, you will also find the Managed Conservation Lands layer. The Natural Heritage Program aggregates data on conserved lands across the Commonwealth to maintain the most comprehensive and accurate accounting of all permanently conserved lands in Virginia, both fee-owned lands and lands under conservation easement. We regularly request conserved lands data from land trusts, local, state, and federal agencies, and other conservation organizations. In addition to being available on NHDE, this data set is available for download for use in GIS. NHDE also includes a searchable species and natural communities database that users can query to produce lists of resources that occur in specific counties, watersheds, subwatersheds, or physiographic regions. You can search for information on individual or groups of resources by scientific or common name, taxonomic group, federal or state legal status, and global or state rarity rank. Please note that the species community search reports are not site-specific and are not to be substituted for a project review or for on-site surveys required for environmental assessments of specific project areas. DCR Natural Heritage Environmental Review staff respond to submitted projects with full site-specific recommendations and considerations for the activities associated with the project. These recommendations and considerations cannot be obtained solely from the species community search, which provides course-level query capabilities. Please email nhdsupport@dcr.virginia.gov with any questions you may have. Please continue watching for additional information about data and functionality on the Natural Heritage Data Explorer.